this in terms of metabolism, everybody wants to think I need to increase my metabolism. I'm going to eat this meal. I'm eating this protein shake. My metabolism is going to rise. Well, it turns out I've not measured a single broken metabolism in 3 years in my lab. 100 people, no one has a broken metabolism. Your metabolism scales with your mass, pretty much. Inside whatever size you are is your thin, lean self. Give that thin, lean self the steel equivalent of what you lost and carry it around all day, and that's what happens. But what's really interesting is that now on the extreme side, so I could say all this in terms of food, but when I was dieting, even doing extreme dieting by everybody else, it's just a very low calorie diet.
Days is
right?
Extreme.
Well, I'm just saying before even that, just in the things that I do where people will lose weight rapidly with me, most people that I work with lose weight 0.6 to 0.8 pounds of fat a day. And that's without exercise.
Is that with cold?
No.
No cold?
No. Cold is part of it, but it's not part of it in the way you're thinking of it. Okay. So I use it as an adjunct therapy, but it's not to increase the metabolism.
We'll talk about cold later.
Yeah. So basically though, what's interesting is that, in all the different regimes, my metabolism always tracks with the Francis Benedict equation. And when we go back later, I'll show you, I've got the 1918 study, I show you, I have all their data. The point is, those guys did this research, and what they did is right. And what we've done today is we have popularized these words. And I literally have debates with people about metabolism.
Can you define what you mean by
so I'm talking
metabolism?
about so what I'm talking about is the net sum of respiration of all your cells. So the way we measure metabolism is we measure the carbon dioxide that's exhaled, breath by breath, and the oxygen that goes in, and then the oxygen comes out. So we know delta oxygen, we know the carbon dioxide. And so the ratio of carbon dioxide to oxygen is called the respiratory quotient, or RQ. It tells us, like a thumbprint, what fuel we're burning. So if you look at this general stoichiometry, like the combustion of ethanol plus oxygen equals CO2 plus water, and you do the balanced equation like you did, you'll see that you get a 3 on one side, 2 on the other, or 2 on the one side, 3 on the other, and you do 2 and then 3, and you get the respiratory quotient of 0.67. Okay. So that's a number. So if I'm mainly metabolizing alcohol, my respiratory quotient will push down. Carbohydrates of all times, doesn't matter what kind they are, all of the glucose, anything that's dropping in there, those have a respiratory quotient of about 1. And then fats or lipids, all around between 0.69 and 0.7. So what's really interesting is that, and amino acids, they average 0.84 if I average all of them. And so proteins are kind of a mixture. One protein might be a slightly lower, slightly higher, but they average 0.84, which is great, because the only way we measure protein is not through the carbohydrate, because by that time the deaminations happen, you've lost all that energy through the urea, and it looks like sugar coming out otherwise, right? But what we can do with protein is we collect the urine, which is why I'm carrying an orange jug around all day. Too much information, but it's science, right? So we get the nitrogen from the urine, and then we can back out. But by knowing the carbon dioxide produced and the oxygen, we can see the ratio of glycogen to fat burn real time.
And you're saying that you have not seen someone's metabolism that's been broken.
Meaning they're at their metabolic rate, which would be like speed of the car, is what all the industry's focused on. Everybody wants to increase their metabolic rate. What I'm saying is, how fast you're going only matters if you're headed in the right direction. You need a compass too. And RQ is kind of the compass. It is the indicator. Am I burning mainly carbohydrate or am I burning mainly fat? You can run your ass off for hours. And if you're only burning carbohydrate, you just get on the glycogen treadmill. And so then what people do to counter that is they say, oh, I'm going to remove all the carbohydrate and shift my body into ketosis, so I'm burning fat all the time, so that when they're running, they are burning fat. But again, it's not necessary, because it turns out when we become more restrictive, your body's smart. And when we become more restricted, you naturally start shifting to more and more and more fat, because your body knows to conserve glucose, to conserve it. It wants to. So where I'm going with metabolism is that all the discussions we have about metabolism, about boosting metabolism, about all these things, even cold stress, a lot of them fall into the that simple thing I said earlier, which is we used to eat to support our activity because food was rare. And today we're active to support our eating. And the more simple thing is you can't out-exercise your mouth. It's impossible. It's thermodynamically impossible. You can swallow way more than you can move. It's just not. So by talking about metabolism, what I'm saying about not being broken is you don't have a slow metabolism. That's not your problem. It's not that you have a slow metabolism. Now you got to go get hormones to speed up your metabolism that nobody, by the way, ever measured. Isn't it amazing? All these people talk about metabolism and they don't measure. And so that was what I started to say earlier was I have these debates and I say, well, how many metabolisms have you measured? Do you know anybody who's measured a metabolism? Have you ever touched anybody that's measured metabolism? And the answer is most people never made it. And I hadn't. I was talking about metabolism. I was guilty of all the same stuff. But once I started measuring it every day, and when we measure years later, you're going to find it's way more dynamic than you think it is. And then, because you are very precise about the things you want to know, this one's really going to mess with you because it's not what we think. So this boosting the metabolism, we're going to boost metabolism. Now, cold stress. We'll come back to it when we talk about cold stress because there's some really specific things on cold stress and some really specific numbers that I can give you or I can show you some things that I've done with cold stress, which is kind of interesting because it turns out mild cold stress naturally tends to lower your RQ, meaning shifting towards fat. And we'll talk about that when we get to that. But just to sum up metabolism, we're not broken. And that's, one of the things I'm going to try to talk about in our book in more common language is say, look, we're not broken. Let's not start with that. Let's start with the food we're eating and the social environment of why we eat. And then superimpose on top of that my benign conspiracy, or I could say our benign conspiracy, which is I really wanted people to shift more towards healthspan eating. Mm-hmm. I want them to shift more towards a kind of diet that would promote healthspan because it's really embarrassing that the community that we run with, and we know all the people we're talking about, the community we run with that are talking about longevity and talking about all this stuff, and they aren't eating well. And if we can't, we know this stuff works, like you said, we know it works now. We just have to do it.
Well, who doesn't want to live a healthier life and be younger when they're older?
Right.
Who doesn't, want to, not be crippled and
right.
Degenerated?
Arthritis.
Who wants to
heart
that?
disease,
Pain,
diabetes,
suffering. All that. It's like I think that that eating to increase your health span. I think it is my goal, and I think that it is a lot of people's goals, even if they don't realize it.
Right.